Tyrese Haliburton and Obi Toppin have been better recently. Why? Is it just that they're making shots, or is it more? Plus, Ben Mathurin, should he keep starting when Aaron Nesmith returns? And NBA ratings. What's the deal here? We'll talk about it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, a lot of stuff I want to get into. That was going to be the first day of Derek Week, but Derek Week has been postponed. Derek Schultz will join us tomorrow, but no Derek Kramer today. Just me. Got caught up with the NBA Cup Finals and Locked On NBA. Just didn't work out. So instead, I want to talk about lots of stuff by myself, and I can get way more data nerdy by myself. But I promise some big picture stuff that I will be curious about trends-wise. Tyrese Haliburton and Obi Toppin and their much better play of late. Ben Mathurin, should he keep starting when Aaron Nesmith returns, whenever that actually does happen? I think that was a big discussion when Mathurin was playing awesome early, and I want to revisit it now that he isn't playing so well, because I think my takeaway might be the same, but I wonder if everybody else's is. And I want to talk about NBA ratings. It's been a huge topic of discussion among people who ask me about the NBA a lot. Hey, what's going on with those numbers? Let's start with this. Tyrese Haliburton, last 10 games. Awesome. Very good. His numbers look like last year. Obi Toppin, in the month of December. Sensational. His numbers look not like last year. They look even better. What's going on here, right? This is very easy to look at and say, man, if they just beat the Hornets, they didn't beat the Hornets, to be clear, but had they just beaten the Hornets, like, this would have been their best 10-game stretch by results of the season. Like, if they actually snuck out of Toronto or Brooklyn, they'd be 7-3 in their last 10. I'm doing a lot of what-ifings, but like, the team is playing okay, and these two guys are putting up awesome stats. Like, what's going on? What has ignited the turnaround of these two players? Because it does coincide with the Pacers getting better results. Maybe not playing necessarily better, although the last two games maybe so. What's going on here? I want to start with Haliburton. Tyrese Haliburton, last 10 games, 22.1 points, 8.6 assists on 50, 41, 87 splits. That's very good. Turns out a good player who's been good for years and years and years doesn't just totally suck all of a sudden. He's not as good as last year, but he is playing better. And it's very important for the Pacers that it continues, obviously, but I think that's noteworthy. But the question I'm asking with both him and Toppin here is this just shooting? Is the ball going in? Because obviously that's been a big part of this for Haliburton. 50% from the field is a major deal. He was not making half his shots earlier in the season, right? I don't even need to run numbers from earlier in the season, because his percentage from the field this year, even with this 10-game stretch of shooting 50%, is 42.6%. For the year from three, it's at 35%, even after 10 games at 41.2%, right? He's still climbing back from a dreadful start, but he's been much better. So is it just that? Is it just the scoring? So a couple things stand out. Minorly, something I've been talking about a lot is the number of attempts he's actually getting from three. In this stretch, 9.7 3-point attempts per game. In the first 17 games of the season, was not taking 10 threes a game. Was not even taking 9 threes a game. Barely over 8. And some of that's just taking less when you're making less, but some of that is that legitimately the Pacers offense has allowed him to wiggle free from deep more often, which not only helps him get shots going from deep, but it creates spacing for the rest of the team, which is why I think he's had better, not as last year's numbers, but better assist numbers, right? 8.6 per game in this stretch for the season. That's about what he's at, but last two games, double-doubles with over 20 points each. 3 of his last 4 with 20-plus points. They still have a great record when he's over 20 points, right? The scoring change for him has at least given the Pacers a higher floor offensively, but is it just the ball going in? I would say no. I think the stylistic tweak that has changed here for the Pacers and for Tyrese Haliburton, as it relates to how he's doing this or what it looked like compared to last year, is where the shots are coming from, right? Lot fewer long dribble shots, as in 7+ dribbles and then shooting. Last 10 games, 19.8% of his shots after 7+ dribbles. That's down from a season average. An increased percentage of his shots after 0 dribbles. He's taking more catch and shoot shots, right? Catch and shoot percentage last 10 games, 19.1%, almost 2% over his season average. and taking 7+ dribbles before shooting for the season. That's 22.1% of his shots. In the last 10 games, that number's down to 19.8. And the 0 dribble number, obviously, with the catch and shoot number going up, is up, right? And when he's taking the shots has changed. Late in the shot clock for the season, 9.9% of his shots in the last 4 seconds of the shot clock, about 5% in the 4 seconds immediately preceding that. In this recent game stretch we're talking about, that number is lower, right? I just got those backwards. 11.3% for the season in the 0 to 4 section of the shot clock, and 6.7% in the 7 to 4, 9.9 and 4.6 in the recent stretch. So not only are the shots going in, he is taking them at better times. They are better shots. They are catch and shoot shots. They get up quicker. They get up quicker within the offensive set. And I think that is what makes it feel stylistically more like last year, more so than any actual output that he's doing, is that he's able to get to what he's doing quicker. It feels like his release has been quicker. His shot's been there. He's confident with it. He gets it up right when he gets the sliver of space. It's at the right time on the clock. It just feels more threatening in a total package. And so if you made me sum up what looks different about Haliburton, besides just the ball going in the basket, it's how he's getting to the shots and the pace and tempo and just, I would say, urgency, for lack of a better term, of him getting into his shots instead of shooting a lot of shots because he has to shoot because the clock's winding down, or shooting a lot because he's asked to break down a defense. He needs to do a bunch of moves to get by somebody. That is not a part of his game recently. So that all adds up as some small changes to a really big output change. He's playing much better recently. It's very important for the Pacers that keeps going. Obi Toppin, another guy that's following a similar pattern. Pre-December, right? This month. This is a perfect cutoff calendar-wise. Obi Toppin's first 20 games this season would be the start of the year through the end of November, right? That's 19 games. I can't count. He missed a game. He was averaging 8.9 points and 3.1 rebounds per game on 52, 31, 89 splits. Since then, in just the month of December, Obi Toppin has smashed those stats. In fact, he's been over that scoring average every game in the month of December, where he's averaging 15.4 points, 6.4 rebounds on 54, 32, 91 splits. Terrific month. He had a 0 plus minus against the Bulls. He's been positive every other game, including the Toronto and Brooklyn losses, right? Just an awesome month for Obi Toppin. What's going on here? Is it the same as Haliburton in some ways, where he's just finally making shots, and that has been a huge deal? His three ball vanished in that first month and a half of the season. Or is there actually more to this, right? So here's what I would say first. Yes, he is making shots, right? The last couple games, he's been on fire from three, although he did have a 1-for-6 game and a 1-for-4 game in the stretch. He's still at 43% for the month, but he's making them again. Like, his shot looks better when it goes in, obviously. He's still finishing plays at a high level to be at 59% with the higher volume of threes, and he is significantly up to season averages and percentages in that stretch. But the big thing that's changed for Toppin, and the reason it's felt like he's playing faster to me, is he is destroying the glass, and he is running after the boards. I don't have numbers for that. I've just been watching the games. I can tell you that. In the month of December, small sample, only 7 games, Toppin is averaging 6.4 rebounds per game. That's a great number on a Pacers team that really needs rebounding. It's also really great for Obi Toppin. You know how many times Obi Toppin had more than 6.4 rebounds in a game before this month? One time. He had 7 rebounds when the Pacers beat the Celtics. That game went to overtime. Every other game, he had 6 or less. In this month, he's averaging more than 6. An 8-rebound game in Memphis, a 9-rebound game in Toronto, a 7-rebound game in Chicago, an 8-rebound game in Philly. He is destroying the glass. And that's something that he talked about being a focus for him last year with the Pacers, right? And when he hits the glass and the Pacers can get in transition with him on the floor, and he's making the shots when he runs the corners, he just becomes the perfect pace-setting bench fit for this team, right? So he has been exceptional in that way. I think it's gone beyond the box score for both Haliburton and Toppin, where, like, it's just obvious watching them, they're playing better. But this is more than just them making shots. I think that's obviously a major part of it. They were awful from an efficiency perspective, especially compared to their expectations for the first month and a half. Shots are falling. Rebounds are happening. Quicker stuff is happening for Haliburton. And some of this just comes down to pace. When the team's pace is what they want, when the spacing and movement's what they want, those two look good. They're good identity setters, but some of it comes down to their own things, like making better decisions early on the shot clock or hitting the glass harder than they have all season. That's where the Pacers are at with those two, and those two have been huge in the team with a bit of a turnaround here. It's going to be important that they keep it rolling with the road trip starting tomorrow by the time this comes out. Now I want to talk about Ben Mathurin, who did something very interesting in the last game. I briefly talked about it, but now I want to talk about it more in the context of the following question. Should Ben Mathurin keep his starting spot when Aaron Nesmith returns? We'll get to that next here on Locked On Pacers. Before we talk about that, though, I need to talk to you guys about the great people over at GameTime, who's focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means bringing people together at live events, and that experience is the best. GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. They filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. If you do search through thousands of tickets, GameTime is the place to do it. They have so many great features like customizing your spot. They have super deals. They have seat views right in the app before you buy. You can toggle off hidden fees on there at any time, so you know what you're paying when that final screen comes to checkout. It is the best way to get tickets to events. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? GameTime. Also, very quickly, let's talk about Rocket Money. It can help you find subscriptions you forgot about or were paying for twice. It's happened to lots of people. People I know who hopped on Rocket Money and found out, and boom, they have had some money saves. Rocket Money makes it easy to track those things down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. It's a personal finance app that helps you cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved them a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year. One of the best features is that subscription tracker, but so many more. Their goals feature, for example, really help people not stress about budgeting every month. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. And one more time, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making this your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen, Locked On Bucks. The NBA Cup champs, the Bucks. They did it. Big winners. Darvin Ham, two-time NBA Cup winner. And Taurean Prince, the same thing. Also a two-time NBA Cup champion. Shout out to Taurean Prince, who had exactly 6 points and exactly 2 assists in both NBA Cup title games. And he won both of them, beating the Pacers last year and the Thunder this year. Locked On Bucks. I'll have more on the run to the Cup finals from the Bucks. Let's talk about Ben Mathurin. And this question will make people think differently of what I'm asking than what I intend. But the question I want to ask, this got brought up as a very frequent topic early in the season. Mathurin was hooping 38-point games against New York, 30-point games against Boston, a bunch of good 20-pointers along the way, 28 in Toronto. Just was awesome, right? And everybody said the same thing. Oh, he's got to keep starting. And a lot of people said for Andrew Nembhard, and I disagree with that. If he's going to replace a starter, it should be Nesmith. But now recently he's not having those kind of games. And I don't mean this to disparage him. I think he played quite well against New Orleans. I spent time talking about his early game decision-making, even though he only had 8 points in that game, right? But his scoring numbers, he hasn't had a 20-point game since they beat Portland at home on the 27th of November, right? And before that, he hadn't been over 20 since the 18th. He's only been over 20 points one time in the last calendar month. And then again, this is not to say he's playing worse. I think he's making progress in ways the Pacers need him to. It's just reality of life. So that's why this will feel like a weird time to ask this question. But the real reason I'm diving into this question is, and I talked about this a little bit after the New Orleans game, Ben Mathurin took 6 shot attempts against the Pelicans, and he played 28 minutes, right? On the season, he's taken fewer than 10 shots in a game just 6 times all year. And that was the second most minutes he's played in one of those games. The only one more was Orlando, and he had 20 points that night because he took 14 free throws. So he actually tried to take more shots in that game when they beat the Magic, right? But in Houston, he only played 25. There was garbage time when they beat Detroit on opening night. He closed the fourth quarter out, but had a bunch of free throw attempts. The other ones are garbage time games that were ugly for the Pacers. So this one stands out to me for that reason, too. It was also the fewest shot attempts. 6 is the fewest shot attempts he's taken in a game he started this year. Every other time before that, he'd taken 7 or more, right? So does that actually mean something in the context of Andrew Nembhard being back and where this starting lineup appears to be kind of sorting itself out with a hierarchy? Haliburton playing better, Siakam dominating with post-ups this year. Turner and Nembhard filling a bunch of gaps, and Nembhard keeps the ball moving, right? It's not that Mathurin's forgotten. It's just like harder for him to get up a bunch of shots. I mean, since Nembhard returned, I would wager that his shot attempts per game are down from the rest of the season. So what does this mean, right? Where is the status of Ben Mathurin right now? Because the thing that stood out early in the season was, well, man, they were still just way better with the 5-man combination of 4 starters plus Mathurin instead of 4 starters plus Nesmith. And that number still holds to this day, right? The starting 5 of Haliburton, Nembhard, Mathurin, Siakam, Turner is plus 42 in 133 minutes. Boom! Awesome. They should be thrilled about that. Their offense hasn't been that good, but they've actually defended pretty well as a group. Some of that's Nembhard, some of that's Mather being a better defender, some of that's Haliburton being a better defender. Still not good defense, although 274 points allowed on 273 possessions is good. But those players have done well, right, in those moments. And Mathurin deserves some credit for being a part of that. But that group has looked good, right? That starting 5 has looked good. The normal starters, the same 4 starters, Turner, Siakam, Nembhard, Haliburton, with any other 5th player that's not Ben Mathurin, the Pacers are minus 10 this year, right? So clearly he has some additive value that's not just inherent to those other 4 players. Those 4 with Nesmith, which was good last year, so I am more okay with just throwing out this number. But those 4 with Nesmith is minus 14 this year in 68 minutes. Those 4 with Jarris Walker is minus 3 this season in 4 minutes. And those 4 with Ben Shepherd, who to me would be the most natural fit of the non-Nesmith players, actually is plus 7 in about 6 minutes. So that is also a discussion to have, as Ben Shepherd, not so distant return, according to Rick Carlisle, but still a sign, hey, it's not just that it's the other 4 players and Mathurin happens to be playing with them. Like, there is something this season, not in the past. We saw Nesmith with that group last year. There's something about this season that has made Mathurin and that group click and work, right? So other stuff that pops about those numbers is like, if you just put in the starters with Nesmith, they're minus 14 in 68 minutes. It's not very good. It's not on Nesmith. He didn't have a bad year. Pacers shot 57.5% with that group out there and just couldn't make a 3. But that is how it goes. That's just how it is. And with Nesmith on and no other starter on the floor, the last 2 seasons, the Pacers are minus 38 in total. And I wanted to look that up because the discussion isn't just Ben Mathurin or Aaron Nesmith as a starter. The other part of that is one of them's with the bench. How good is the second unit with that player? And that's why this is still a discussion to me, even though I'll tell you now, my answer is Ben Mathurin should still start. Here's the thing, right? The discussion so much is, well, and this is right, Haliburton and Mathurin still working through becoming a great fit. That's true. And the other part of the discussion is also, given the way the Pacers bench is structured, the opportunities, both in quality and quantity, for Ben Mathurin might be better with the bench, might be better against those going against bench groups, and B, playing alongside Toppin. McConnell just lets him get the touches that are easy for him and in rhythm and with some space at times. It worked last year. It worked the year before at times. Like, it makes sense. It sounds bad. It sounds like degrading and a demotion, but it's not. It's where he's been really good, and it's helped the Pacers put the right players next to Haliburton and the rest of the starting 5. So that's why I wanted to look up that last number, right? Pretend it happens. And again, I would say that right now I think it should, but pretend Nesmith returns and he is just coming off the bench every game. Well, the Pacers haven't been very good in those moments, right? That is why I wanted to know that, because that makes you go, well, maybe he should still start then, because we know the Pacers bench with Mathurin has been good. However, like, across the last 2 years, the best lineup with Nesmith and no other starters was Nesmith, Hield, Jackson, Mathurin, McConnell, plus 7 in 25 minutes. Toppin, Nesmith, Jalen Smith, Ben Shepherd, TJ McConnell, plus 3 in 21 minutes. 3 of his top 4 lineups with no other starters in the positive and plus minus, but some really ugly ones in like 17 plus minutes where it just doesn't look great. So this adds up to the reason, if you're going, so hang on. There's a couple reasons you would argue to put Nesmith right back in there. You know the fit exists from last year. I don't need to look up numbers from this year. I don't need to tell you about those 60-something minutes. Obviously, it matters. The team changed. Players are playing different. But last year happened. Like, people know the proof of concept of that. The other part of this is Nesmith with the bench just has been different in terms of the utility it actually provides the Pacers. I think improvements to Nesmith and Toppin and McConnell, and in theory, Jarris Walker, although him being more of a 3, certainly makes it harder to imagine Nesmith with the second unit than a starting 5. Regardless of that, he has not fit as well with those groups than the starting 5. And so that would be the reason that you'd think more about it, is Mathurin can do a lot more damage off the bench. And a lot of those guys care about closing games, and the way the game flows or how they're playing could still dictate who closes games. The thing is, I think what this will come down to for me is, one, Mathurin plus the starters has actually been like a good lineup this year, right? It has beat other teams, and it's not just because of the other 4 non-Ben Mathurin players. Something about what he's doing for that group is helping them beat other teams, even when it feels like a clunky backcourt fit or the pace mismatching holds the team back sometimes. Positive plus minus, they've played well, right? So I think that is part 1 of this. And part 2 of this is, look, they're 12 and 15 right now. Maybe they go on a run and just shut this part of the argument up. But if they get to a point of the season where they're significantly under 500, like finding out for sure what a Mathurin starting 5 for the Pacers looks like is like the biggest goal of the rest of their season. Because if he can't be a starter or wouldn't fit, you would want to know that like as soon as possible, right? So I think my answer to the question is still yes, even though recently, as Mathurin has shown himself doing things that are good for fitting with that group by taking trick shots. Nesmith's returned will ignite these conversations because he hasn't been in the past. Who knows what'll be going forward as good with those bench groups. But I think Mathurin, of course, has been better this year than last by significant margins in some ways, is a great player, and they need to figure out what this can look like or if it's the right answer. And I get, again, if they start Nesmith, I would get it. I think that would make their bench much better in general, but I think they should, when he returns, keep trying to start Ben Mathurin and see what that actually looks like and see if you can get Nesmith with those bench groups to work. But I do wonder if a McConnell, Nesmith, Walker, Toppin, Bryant bench is lacking in shot creation, let's say, even though they very rarely would get to all 5 of those guys. Last thing I want to talk about today, a huge topic in the NBA world, ratings. They're down. Why? I'll give my takes as we close out today's Locked On Pacers. Before we get to that, though, I need to first tell you guys about the great people over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action or jump into the NBA hoops with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers on FanDuel can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. How about that? The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you know what's coming and you want to wager on it. Well, you can check out the latest stats from the action, or you can view live play-by-play. You can do so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is, again, on FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We also need to talk about BILT. This episode is sponsored by BILT Rewards. If you're a renter, listen up. The total game changer. Thanks to BILT, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries and travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks. It's completely free to join. You can earn valuable BILT points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost. You can redeem points for flights, hotel stays, even future rent payments. With over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program, possibilities are endless. Plus, an access to unique experiences that are exclusive to BILT members. If I were using it right now, I don't rent, so can't. But if I was, I would absolutely be all over the travel points. Love that concept. And if you're already paying rent, why not make it work for you, right? Seems like an awesome idea. So start earning points on your rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure to use our links so they know that we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen should be Locked On NBA, where you can hear me and Wes Goldberg break down the NBA Cup title game. Zach LaVine to the Nuggets rumors, all-star format changes, gross, and the NBA Cup and what they can do to make that better. I have some ideas, and I did last year too after watching the Pacers running it, and I said a lot of the same things then. So let's talk about ratings. This will be shorter, but it's actually been really surprising to me and honestly encouraging in some ways how many people in my life have asked me, what do you think of this NBA ratings discussion? For those who have been out of the loop or are uninterested in this, but are interested in my opinion for some reason, Lots of discussion about why NBA ratings are so down on TV this year. A lot of people have their own theories about the product of the NBA, right? What's better, what's worse? Why has it been harder for people to put eyeballs in the NBA this year? First of all, I have questions about the numbers behind TV streams, just because every year we get a report about the NBA and their ticket gate numbers and their social media numbers, and they're all like steadily rising or right where they should be in terms of what you'd expect. And that makes me want to say, one, a big factor in ratings drop is just illegal streaming, right? I think it's a big factor in the numbers and what's trackable and what isn't, how many people are actually doing that, right? No doubt about it. I don't know what the damage is for the NBA, but certainly some. And I don't know what their studies have said or how they would get to the bottom of that, but I think that's a big part of it. In terms of the actual product, right? Because the numbers obviously matter. The numbers show that less people are watching, but also people are complaining about the product more often. And so I have a few theories. People talk a lot about too many threes. And I kind of hate that argument and the principle of what it is. But here's what I'll start with. You can say that, and I can spin back at you and say, well, there's about as many actual jump shots. They're just as there were 20 years ago. They just happen to be threes now instead of twos. And like every team creates their threes in a different way. Some teams play through the post. Some teams do a lot of screen and roll stuff. Some teams just jack them up and make them, right? Like the way teams get up threes is all different. That's all great. Like I love the NBA. I don't need to sell you on the NBA. If you're this far listening to this podcast, you probably do too, right? But what I say, I can throw out all the numbers or tell you all the things. Like if you watch the league and you don't like it as much because of the 3-point volume, it's just how you feel, right? It doesn't matter what I'm saying to you. What matters is how you feel about it. If it feels more homogeneous to you, then you won't like it as much. Like in my head, when people say, ew, every team's trying to shoot threes every possession, that hits me like if someone was saying, ew, every NFL team's trying to score a touchdown every possession. But it's not the same in some ways, but it is in some ways, right? The goal of the sport is to score, right? So the way I have baked it down in my head is threes feel less like significant, right? In the past, they were awesome. And I still think threes are awesome, especially 30-foot bombs from like Steph or Stars. Like, whew, they're sick. But it used to be like when a team made 10 threes in a game, everyone was like so cool and exciting and a huge moment. Now teams make 10 and a half, and it's just like, okay, there's another one. And so they just feel different, right? So I think stylistically that is something that is potentially part of it, although I think that's a very overstated part of why people are no longer watching the NBA. If you made me answer the question, my number one reason would be the number of games played in the league is a turnoff, I think, in some cases. Not a direct turnoff. People aren't like, ew, there's too many games, I'm not going to watch. It's just that who cares if you miss one? It's kind of like the baseball and hockey problem. It's like, oh, it's Pacers versus some other not elite team on this random night. Like if you don't have their local package or whatever, like you're not dying to tune into that game because you know you can catch them 3 other times in that week and it may be a more marquee game or maybe more interesting. So one, there's just too many, right? And then when there's a lot, I think the per game product gets a little diminished, right? I do wonder this. If the league went down to 58 games, which would be playing every team twice, or 66, play every team twice, except your own division, you play them 4 times. And I actually think that makes a lot of sense too, because that's less travel to those teams, and you can still create rivalries in some way doing that. But like, let's just use 66 for the sake of argument, right? The ratio of 66 to 82 games. Could you flip that ratio in terms of how popular each game would be, right? Would each game be whatever that is? 115% more popular because it'd be a bigger deal because there's less games, or people would be willing to pay a little more to come because there's less games, right? That all matter more. It'd be harder to tank because there'd be less games, and there'd be fewer injuries, which I think is a huge turnoff for a lot of people in the NBA. How often guys are out, how often guys are resting. A lot of the core problems of why people don't like the NBA these days can be pointed back to like the core reason that problem exists is potentially because of the schedule the NBA has. And I get why they have it that way. And I think 82 games is fine. I like that there's 82 games myself. I watch several games every day. But I do think a lot of the NBA can be traced back to that. So I think there's a lot going on here in terms of how people consume games, in terms of what the product actually looks like in people's eyes, how they feel about who's playing. And I think a lot of the demands of the schedule have changed how teams approach a season and how games feel in terms of importance. And I don't know what the NBA should do about it, honestly. I think another thing that I would say, this is a very I live in Indiana kind of take, and my favorite team growing up was in DC, but I think the NBA does a really bad job marketing non-marquee players, right? People were not psyched about a Bucks Thunder championship game. That's insane to me. Giannis and SGA is awesome. That's two of the best 5 players in the NBA. But for finally, like the Bucks are on national TV a lot, and the Thunder are getting there. But for forever, it's like Lakers, Knicks, Celtics, Warriors, Kevin Durant's team, sometimes James Harden's team, like all the time. And it takes them forever, like 2 years too late, to put the young stars on TV, to get them in front of people so people actually know who they are and understand their story, how they play, what they're good at, why they have appeal to you to watch them again. They're doing a great job of this with Wemby. They tried to do it with Zion. It didn't work, but that was kind of because of what happened with Zion, not because of what the NBA did. But like, what does some random person who doesn't live in Florida know about how good like Paolo Banchero is, for example? Like the Magic are never on TV. You could name that same argument for any number of players. But that, I think, is the reality of some crumb of truth to all those reasons of why ratings for the NBA are down, and the fact that a lot of their old head broadcast partner leaders just like slam the modern sport all the time. I think all these together are big factors in why less people are interested watching as often as they used to, or tuning into these big events as often as they used to. And I think the NBA needs to make them feel more eventy in some way. And I think having players available and encouraging people to pay for them, or making it impossible to watch them without paying for them, and all sorts of other things could make it better. But that is my short end of why I think NBA ratings are a little down. That said, don't really care. I still love the product. I still love the NBA. I will be watching all the time. I think the basketball gets better every year, and that's why I like the NBA, because I really like basketball. So in general, I find ratings talk nauseating, but I've been asked about it so much that I was like, you know what? I'm going to talk about this. Hope you guys enjoyed today's show and me just opining on nothing for the last 7 to 8 minutes of it. Tomorrow with Derek Schultz, we'll be talking about is this team inconsistent or just bad? And can you disassociate those two words? Talking about Andrew Nemhard, the connector, what we've thought of Myles Turner this season, and does double-digit wins consecutively matter at all for this Pacers team? Then we'll talk Pacers Suns Friday. Lots more fun stuff coming here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. You could find this podcast on Twitter at Locked On Pacers, where you can see clips from episodes and what the topics are for every episode. We have a free newsletter straight to your email inbox every single day. Please check that out. I write blurbs in there all the time. LockedOnDaily.com. I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky at Tony R. East. Back tomorrow with Derek Schultz talking more Pacers. Till then, everybody, have a wonderful day.